The committee will come to order. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Donalds, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Director Chopra, thanks for coming in. You've said previously that markets work best when the rules are simple, easy to understand, and easy to enforce. Would you agree that markets work best when rules are actually relevant to today's marketplace?
Yes.
So let me ask you this. I want to go into a couple of things about payment portions of the CFPB's small dollar rule. I know that this is at the center of litigation and that none of us know for sure where it will end up. Section 1022 of Dodd-Frank requires the CFPB to conduct a 5-year assessment of each significant rule or order adopted by the Bureau under federal consumer law. This assessment is supposed to address the effectiveness of the rule in meeting the purposes of the objectives of the Bureau under Dodd-Frank, as well as specific goals stated by the Bureau. The public would also be allowed to comment on the recommendations for modifying, expanding, or eliminating a rule. If this rule had gone into effect and had not been delayed by all the legal challenges, I believe the Bureau would have had to complete such assessments of this rule this year. When you look at the data, the alternative credit marketplace has shifted dramatically over the past 5 years. So if the court were ultimately to decide with the Bureau on the legality in question, wouldn't it be prudent to evaluate whether the rule is relevant in today's marketplace and is really going to meet the objectives that the Bureau intended?
Yeah, one of the things I've done is I've really opened up and increased the analytical rigor of justice. So many times they create rules and it's not future-proofed. So I'm always open to collecting more information to see if there are any adjustments that need to be made. I don't know the specific provisions you're necessarily referring to that may have been subjected to technological change. There are certainly many rules that were transferred to the CFPB from the Fed and the FTC that were not future-proofed and were way too complex, and certainly simplicity is a lodestar. We can't always get there, but we want to get there.
Would you acknowledge that it's prudent for the CFPB to actually review periodically all of its existing rulemaking and decide whether it's even necessary in today's environment? Case in point, obviously we know that banking is moving by leaps and bounds, becoming far more technical for a myriad of reasons, regulation being one of them. Wouldn't it be prudent for CFPB to actually review these things periodically, make adjustments, or cancel previous rules altogether?
Well, that's what you're seeing some of me doing during my tenure. We are reviewing some older ones, putting it out for public comment. Even the one on credit cards is really a rule review at its core to make sure it's based in reality. I think you're raising this point, though, on digital that's really important. And we need to make sure that we're not just thinking about the human world, but how will it work in the metaverse? How will it work in other contexts? Because otherwise it creates problems if people don't.
Well, I will say, and I'm glad you raised that for 2 reasons. One, with the relook at the credit card rule. You've said, and I think my colleague from California brought it up in earlier questioning about the changing in late fees from $30 to $8. You're on the record saying that by our estimate, 75% of late fees, $9 billion, have no purpose beyond putting the credit card companies, beyond padding the credit card companies' profits. Do you stand by that statement?
Yes, and that's based on our estimate, and that's based on a point in time where late fees might have been lower than they otherwise would have been. Congress was clear. Those penalties are supposed to be reasonable and proportional. And we do not want loopholes from rules being used to evade the law.
Director Chopra, do you think that it is prudent that the CFPB has the ability to unilaterally decide what are going to be late fees on consumer financial products, notwithstanding the ability of cost shifting as a result of capping fees?
Well, we don't have unilateral ability. Congress sets out the framework in law.
Ooh, Director Chopra, I would argue that the CFPB is taking broad use of their powers, which, by the way, to be clear, I do believe wholeheartedly your agency is unconstitutional. I think it was unconstitutional when it was created in Dodd-Frank. I think you were given broad latitudes under, frankly, partisan government at the time to not even really be accountable to the people's branch of government, the legislative body. And so I do have issues with CFPB, but let's be clear, you guys have taken broad latitude on many issues over time.
And it is
throughout your
always
existence.
consistent with the laws that Congress passes.
And I would argue that those
Gentleman's
laws have never
time's
been subject
expired.
to Congress's ability to oversee you. I yield.
Gentleman, time's expired.